Thank you for joining us. Well, good. Now
no problem. Hey, we're driving to Kula from Lowe's. All you will be experiencing. We start production on the 23rd, so here we go.
Woo! All right.
Nice.
Now that we're here, I just wanted to do a proper introduction of Ellie and Simon. There they are. They're the ones who are hosting us today, Nerd Safari. And
Aloha.
For those of you who remember, they did this really cute movie trailer reaction. And I thought their reaction was so adorable, I started following them. And then they followed up with a full review of the movie. And guys, Ellie, Simon, your review was so loving and you had so much affection for our film. It warmed my heart so much that it made me want to gather everybody and have a chat with you and hopefully, you know, get even more viewers watching your channel. But thank you so much for doing such a nice review of our film. And we're so grateful.
Thank you for setting us up, Jude. We really appreciate it. And especially for everyone to making the time to come together as well.
Yeah, and really, you know, all we were hoping to do today was just gather the Ohana from Finding Ohana and just allow people to chat.
Well, may I kick things off by actually asking the group a question? So guys, today is what? Today is March 14th. Our movie launched on January 29th and millions of people have watched it now all around the world. At one point, we even reached #1 in the world. And I know. And you've all done the press tour. You've all been interviewed by different outlets and journalists, and you've all been incredibly active on social media talking about the film. Now with that in your rearview mirror, what's something you'd like to share with Ellie and Simon and their viewers and with all of us? Like something that you feel like, wow, here's still something that people don't realize, or here's something I want people to know about me or the film. So just throwing that out to the crowd.
I think what people don't realize is how close this group has gotten, especially the kids, you know, that you guys are really as tight as you were in the film on screen. You guys were really that tight as like a real family in, you know, off screen. So you guys have been able to like keep in touch and gather, you know, as much as you can during COVID. But I think people would be surprised to know just how connected that you guys truly were.
I think when we say like we're still like close, people might think like we just like text each other once in a while. I don't think they're aware that like we literally like have group times and like we still like see each other and see each other a lot. So I think if they saw that, it'd be really cool.
Yeah, I think even building on top of that, like in a real experience, I remember I had COVID. I got COVID.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
And the first people to bring me anything, this was like literally, what was it, same day or maybe day after I had it, where Lindsay and Kea came and dropped off a care package and did the whole like knock, what do they call doorbell, ding dong ditching? And I ran out and they had brought me just a bunch of juices and
lihingmoy, kakimochi.
I wish. Oh my gosh, I wish. But they brought me all the stuff that I actually needed, not the stuff that I wanted. So they brought me a bunch of like health and wellness stuff and all that.
It didn't matter because he couldn't taste it.
He couldn't taste
any of it.
So to me, I just closed my eyes and imagined it was lihingmoy candy. And so even outside of us three, specifically Lindsay, Kea, and I, who you know, we all live in Los Angeles and we've gotten time to all hang out together and have quarantine safe gatherings and seeing each other here and there, or even just group FaceTimes and all that. It's also, you know, being lucky enough to be back in Hawaii right now, working on another project, and I think Mapuana can speak to this too, is really seeing how I think a lot of people talk about how representation matters. That's a term that a lot of people use. I think we say it a lot without realizing how important it is. And I think Mapuana can speak to it about how many people have come up to, and I haven't even talked to you about it, Mapuana, but I'm sure anybody who's seen the movie comes up and talks about how important it is that they've seen Polynesian siblings or Hawaiian siblings or family really kind of bond whether it be in the movie or be, you know, on social media as we have since the movie's come out, or in interviews and whatnot. And so I think that that's something that not only it's been something that's helped the three of us specifically as friends or as siblings in the movie, but it was one of those moments where you go, oh man, representation matters isn't just like a saying to make people of color, people of underrepresented communities feel good about themselves. It's actually something that influences people to want to be better and live better.
Well said.
Very well said, Alex.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah. You know, we got to work with so much local cast and crew here. Jude and the producers made sure that we had tons of local people while we were working in Oahu, and I feel like it's very much infused into the movie and into Hawaiian production. You know, Jude not only had the opportunity, I'm speaking a little more behind the scenes because, as you know, I did do acting, but I was also behind the scenes a lot. So I was also speaking to the crew a lot. And a lot of the crew is actually on the current production that we're in. Jude and the whole team was able to really kind of raise everybody up. Like, representation not only matters with cast, but with crew. And all of the little whispers and things that Jude, you and I got to hear from crew members and people that were like, hey, let's do it this way, or like just little things like that added to things that just heightened us overall. And now watching production here, I'm so proud of the people that are here. A lot of them now from the film have become now department heads and leaders in this community now. So I guess I just I have so much deep love and respect for the people that back us, because as you know, the closest thing I had to representation was Lilo and Stitch as far as movies went. I loved that movie because that
great representation. We will not be belittling Lilo and Stitch on this interview.
No, not at all.
We loved it.
I loved Lilo and Stitch. I cried. I was so homesick. They actually used, Hawaiian people for their songwriting. They used Jason Scott Lee, who was in it. They used Tia Carrera, who were local people who got to use their accents for the first time. But then for doing a live action, I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent because I'm very passionate about this part of it, as we all are. We really wanted to make sure we got it right. I was one of the people sort of in charge of doing the pigeon path. When Jude first spoke to me about doing the movie, she was like, Mapu, do you speak pigeon? And I was like, girl, that's my first language. And we did this whole path to make sure we were getting it right. Because sometimes too, I don't know if you guys notice, sometimes when people try to speak pigeon in movies, it's a little bit off.
Even if they're local. Even if they're local. Because
local, it sounds weird. I don't know how come, but I don't know, Kelly. Maybe
I know
you
why.
can speak to that. But anyway, what do you think it is?
It's because they're trying to still stay true to the script and what's written. And a lot of times local people, if they don't have the experience or the confidence to say, oh, that's not how it would be said, they just try to make it work, whatever's on the page, instead of changing it, right? And so they try to just, because they're afraid to rock the boat or question what's already been written. And so I think they just they just do whatever's on the page instead of making it their own and opening their mouth, because a lot of times production doesn't respect the changes, right? But in this case, it was not like that at all. It was very collaborative.
My mom went off when Branscombe was like, hey girl, no hana imo me. She started laughing so hard because she was like, oh my god, they're actually, it's so authentic. But speaking of script, and then I'm done, we did a pass in Pidgin, every single line, how they would say it. And then on top of that, we were so lucky to have Branscombe, to have Kelly, who also just knew it inherently. So, I mean, the amount of authenticity that they wanted to bring was probably the most deepening experience I had personally on this film. And I'm deeply proud of.
Branscombe, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Maybe
yes, please.
If you have good Wi-Fi. Oh, your
DHL van?
You're
Is he-
muted again, Branscombe.
Wow, look at that. That's beautiful. Thank
Papa,
you.
tell us what you think,
Love
man.
all you guys. It's really good to see all of you. And I loved doing this movie because this part was going to originally be played by Sylvester Stallone. And he was unavailable. And then they went to Arnold Schwarzenegger and George Clooney. And that's how I got
no.
part. And Ian Bryce and these wonderful kids. And, you know, it's nice to play Kelly's father because I played her brother. Okay? So I got to tell her what to do and how to live and what to say, god dang it. And I had a great time doing it.
Great.
Was that the question? Was that the question?
Yes.
Yep. No, yeah.
Okay.
Nailed it.
Okay.
Branscombe.
And I would never have learned to talk pigeon if it wasn't for Mapuana. Thank you, Mapuana, to teach me how to talk pigeon.
So Branscombe, while we have good Wi-Fi, how much pigeon do you speak in your daily life? Like you've been in Maui for how long?
So I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital, raised in a Jewish neighborhood of Encino. Been living on Maui for 16 years. And my father being Tahitian, I started Lockwood Elementary in Hollywood, and I spoke French. So speaking pigeon, I used to raise pigeons. So I learned how to talk pigeon by raising pigeons. And in my daily life, I probably use 50-50.
Yeah, that sounds
50-50. Mais quand je parle avec le français, c'est un petit peu français plus de pigeon. Voilà.
Oh, right.
But he speaks Tahitian French.
Right.
beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I got to tell you something funny. People are driving on the road here in Pukalani, and they're going, "Hey, that's the guy, bro. That's the guy from the movie right there, Ohana, right there. Hey, bro, how's it?" Okay.
Have you been getting a lot of recognition of being in the movie around the island?
Yeah, me? Yes,
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
Yes. Whee! Sorry. Yes. Okay, so here's the deal. Do you know how much this movie meant to indigenous Polynesians? It meant everything. They're represented. They got to say a few words about who we are, about how they are. And two ladies are crying. Hey, boy, you make us cry. Whew. I'm crying saying it because it meant so much. It was representation, which they never get. Okay, you messed me up.
Yeah. I've been in a TikTok hole looking at videos of fans of Finding Ohana, videotaping themselves watching the movie, videotaping themselves crying and saying, "Is this what representation looks like? Is this what it feels like?"
Wow.
Papa's crying. She knows. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's really amazing. It's really amazing what this film has done for this community. It's great.
Yeah, and I think to add on to that, a big part that, I mean, everyone's kind of talked on the fact of for Hawaii, but since the movie's come out and like I've been having a lot of fans reach out to me from all over the world, and it's been cool that people from other smaller cultures, smaller islands have been talking to me about this idea of like, I'm from a small island too. Like, it's so cool to see other people's stories and their histories and their cultures. They're like, I wonder if my, culture, like I never get to see it. So having this movie not only opened the pathway for Hawaii and Hawaiians and Polynesians, but for other cultures around the world that haven't had a chance to share their stories, have their voice be heard. It's been cool to see so many fans from around the world just be like, are we next? So I think it's been amazing. I mean, as a Hawaiian, as Mapu and Branscombe and Kelly have said, it's just something that we never got to see ourselves growing up. We all wanted to be actors and actresses growing up, and we watched TV, and it was a far-fetched dream thinking, well, there's no one that looks like me on the screen, but let's just try it anyway. So now knowing that our faces are out there for kids and younger generations, I mean, I have kids reaching out to me saying like, because of you, I think I can do it now. Like, I want to follow my dreams. I'm from Hawaii, it was scary, but kind of like Hana and Lindsay, you followed your dreams and you went out there, and they're like, I want to do it too. And I'm like, that's the kind of stuff that kills me, because for me, that was the dream when I was younger, and to know that it's coming full circle, and I'm inspiring, and our movies inspiring younger generations to go for it. And hopefully one day it's going to be normal to see people of color on screen in lead roles, you know, in front of the camera and behind the camera. It's going to be all worth it for our movie, you know?
Hey, Branscombe, I have a question for you. Actually, I want you to share with the group all the different ethnicities you have played in your acting career.
So all the ethnicities that I have played, I played many, many ethnicities, but I'm also a multiracial kind of guy. I also have Native American Spanish blood. So, you know, I played many Native Americans, as well as I got my start as an extra to a stunt guy doing the fights. And so you get to play many ethnicities. So when I got to play Polynesians, a lot of times on Magnum or whatever shows they weren't quite sure if I look Polynesian enough. I know that sounds funny, but sometimes, you know, they get that, you know what I mean? So I loved representing all the wonderful cultures that I've been able to play, and hopefully I played them very respectfully.
And not to forget, I think a Klingon in Star Trek 3, is that right?
A Klingon, right. Well, there you go. And I don't want to be visited by the Klingons in the middle of the night, but with respect, wonderful.
That's amazing. I guess, Kelly, you haven't shared anything about your thoughts on the movie.
So yeah, I started in the industry over 30 years ago. And so I just always managed to be able to play all kinds of ethnicities. You know, I used to call myself the generic Asian, because I was like, you know, whatever they needed is what I was. And I've even had to, you know, deliver dialogue in a lot of different languages. This is the first time I ever got to speak Hawaiian, which was awesome. But, you know, I played Vietnamese, Korean, Chinese, Japanese, an Eskimo with Branscombe. But this is like the first time I ever felt like I got to play some, like myself, you know, I mean, somebody that really was from Hawaii, because we're not, oftentimes when we get cast, we're just thought of one thing, right? They're like, you are Korean in this, or you are, you know, whatever, Chinese in this. But most people from Hawaii are like 12 different things, you know? I mean, we're such a blend of cultures that we don't just identify as one thing, you know? Even though most of us on this Zoom right now are Polynesian, we're mixed with so many other ethnicities, and we have taken in so many other cultures. So you know, when I play all these other cultures, it's not that I'm blind to who they are, because they're all present in Hawaii, and we all grow up eating Japanese food and have Korean friends, and, you know, have like Chinese New Year, and all of these different ethnicities all blended in, you know, what makes us who we are. So yeah, I didn't feel uncomfortable playing these characters in these different ethnicities. I just felt like, you know, I got to take a little piece of my life experience.
I have an interesting question to pull into this, but it's something that I've been thinking a lot about, especially in this world, and especially because for this movie, we're luckily getting to be closer to the forefront of movies that really involve representation. I think the drama that I can immediately talk on is Gal Gadot getting heat for playing Cleopatra in the Cleopatra kind of biopic. I'm interested what you guys think about moving forward. As Kelly had mentioned, I think all of us have auditioned for many different ethnicities, many different lifestyles that aren't actually native to our own lives. And with this film, I think if this film had gone on, and let's say Jude Weng wasn't as dedicated to being authentic as she was, or Ian Bryce and the production team and Netflix weren't as dedicated to authenticity, they could have easily casted non-Polynesians for this role. If anything, I would call it a stretch that I played a Hawaiian boy for a movie that celebrates Hawaiian culture when I don't have Hawaiian blood. So specifically for Jude, because I think you come from, you know, behind the camera a lot more than anybody else here. What are your thoughts moving forward as we celebrate representation, but we also are actors and we also are art creators who create things. We don't necessarily, we bend rules consistently, but we're also traveling into this new era of representation where oftentimes we want the roles to be played by people who can actually relate to them culturally or relate to them in terms of life struggles. I think it's the same thing for characters who are casted with disabilities, or I know that there was recently some heat for Sia, who casted somebody who didn't have autism as a character who had autism. Where do you think is the line as we move forward with representation, and how do you think that we as actors can play into that?
Yeah, I think as actors and even as a storyteller, I think we're all asking ourselves, well, who gets to tell that story and who gets to play that role, right? So for a long time now, you know, white people have played the parts of Asian characters, right? Charlie Chan and whatnot. And there's so many examples of white people playing Asian characters. And then in regards to actors, can a Maori boy play the role of a Hawaiian person? In my mind, I think yes. We actually did try to cast Hawaiian people. We did look at Hawaiian male actors for the role of Ioane, but ultimately, Alex, you had the perfect package. You had the look, you had the performance, you had the bedside manner, you had everything that really made the role sing. And so there's all sorts of other things that we take into consideration. Now, I think if our production never looked at anybody else and didn't look at Hawaiian and local casting, and we only looked at you, I can understand that we would probably be criticized. But we actually did our due diligence. We did our homework. And so, and I feel like especially for minority actors, there are already so few opportunities that exist for you guys. And so I think it doesn't work the other way. There are more roles for white people, and there are fewer roles for people of color. So people of color are playing different roles and ethnicities, even if it's not directly, you know, their experience. I don't think it gets criticized in the same way.
I think that to me is it's an interesting world, because we are fighting for and making movies to tell stories of underrepresented communities and people. Our goal is equality, but there is still, unfortunately, a division. There are still, like you mentioned, more white roles than there are roles for people of color. There are still kind of lopsided scales when it comes to things like that. And so I think that as we move forward and we try and aim to be examples more than just fighting or opposing the current situation, how do we balance being equal and fair, but also recognizing, like you said, like right now at this point, being equal and fair is giving it a shot, even if the shot doesn't always go through. So it's like you mentioned, I think the fair or right thing to do is go, okay, let's try and be authentic. Let's go for that. And then what's the next best thing? What's the next best thing? What's the next best thing? But I think it's definitely a delicate situation.
Yeah, you know, I've been so fortunate that after the success of Finding Ohana, there's been a lot of people who have been very interested in me as a director. So I've read a tremendous amount of scripts. I feel very blessed to be even able to say that. And I'll tell you, there were some scripts that I thought, you know what? This script needs to be directed by, let's say in one example, it was a story about a South African girl. I felt like, as much as flattered as I am that I'm being offered this, I don't think I'm the right person to tell this story, and I passed on that project. I also was offered a project that was about the LGBTQ community, and I grew up in the Castro, and I feel very close to the LGBTQ community, and yet this story was so specific and so nuanced, I also felt like I wasn't the right person to tell that story. It was a beautiful script, and I passed with all kinds of regrets, saying I'm completely flattered, but I think you need to find somebody specifically that identifies this intimately with this community. So I feel like, I mean, I could be just a greedy ass director and just try and snatch up everything. But to your point, Alex, I feel a responsibility too, that as a storyteller, I'm going to try and find something that I know that I have a very specific experience that I can really be additive for whatever story it is that I want to tell. And by the way, I'm sure you guys aren't surprised to hear, as the press for Finding Ohana started to come out, there were a lot of people on social media that were like, looking at all these names on the, you know, executive producer list and the director list, I don't see any Hawaiian names. And we were criticized and before our film even came out. And so, you know, and I understand that, but the point is, I think there's a level of scrutiny, especially thanks to social media, that I hope Hollywood is listening. You know, I hope Hollywood is paying attention and making better choices and having a conversation about who's the right person to tell the story and who's the right person to act in these roles. But it's not monolithic. It's not the same from project to project and from actor to actor.
It sounds like it's been challenging to walk that line between playing the game so you can actually get something on the screen. So to an extent, you kind of have to suppress certain aspects that you would prefer to highlight, but also make it genuine enough. Like I feel like with this movie, it's a Hawaii we haven't seen before, and it was all the more powerful for that. And even just as people who aren't familiar with Hawaii as much as we definitely should be, that came across so strongly in this movie that it was a very different Hawaii that we were seeing than we'd ever seen before. And it seems that is a product of so many Hawaiian people being involved in the creation of it and behind the scenes. And then as well, finding out, Mapuana, like you were saying, how many people were involved in the crew and local people that you're able to get involved. So you're not just benefiting with the representation, but you're actually, I mean, like the benefits of employing people and kind of giving them opportunities that way. And like you were saying, raising people up. But it sounds like that can be a challenging line to walk, to kind of play the game while also pushing enough to be able to break those kinds of boundaries.
I mean, I think that that's what artists do generally anyway. Is we all have to play, you know, every single person who wants to be an actor or singer wants to do it their way, but to get to their way, I always honestly I use Kanye West as a perfect example of somebody who plays the game just like they're always creative in themselves, but Kanye West had to create, you know, college dropout, graduation, late registration before he could go off and create things like Yeezus or like Yay or all of these things that are creatively completely different and all of that. And I kind of relate that to this in the sense of like, yeah, we have to, and it's unfortunately another truth of not just being a minority in the industry, but really being in the industry in general is you kind of do have to play by rules. In today's current industry, you have to play by rules to get to a certain place. And I think that that's something that as we are in today's world of being able to actually make changes and always being under public eye, there's a dog right there. Okay, cool. Always being in the public eye, we actually have the power to change those things, that we have the power to call things out like we did with the Me Too movement, that we have the power to call things out like we have in the last few years with calling out things that are just outright wrong and not okay. And I think as the years go on, hopefully we can continue this path that we've been on of making positive change in the industry. Everybody here on the Zoom call, including you, Ellie and Simon, to continue telling this new narrative of this is how the industry's been, and this is how it's going to be, because we believe in representing all different walks of life and being fair and equal to all different walks of life, regardless of how you choose to love, regardless of the color of your skin, regardless of anything that makes you unique and different to who you are. So it's this fun challenge because it's really hard, but at the same time, if you have the chance to make a change, and this is something I tell all my friends, and it's something that Jude, you know, is obviously at the forefront of by creating a movie like Finding Ohana, we have the power to really make change and call things out, and we have a platform now, especially with the success of this movie, to continue doing so.
Yeah, I think what you did in this movie that I think was just masterful was balancing sending that really positive, important, fundamental message in the form of an adventure story, in an Indiana Jones, Goonies style adventure story that people love. You know, it's not a preachy, ram down your throat message. It's subtle, it's very authentic, and it's just a blast to watch at the same time. I think that was an incredible accomplishment.
I need to ask Kea what she thinks because no one has heard from you at all.
Well, the event that I went to act before, like I never had acting like in mind, like it was never something like I really thought about. So I think when I did it for the first time and I realized how much I liked it, like when my mom actually like decided to make the sacrifice for us to move, I think that's when like everything started like hitting me, like with all the auditions that I was doing. It was like a very different atmosphere, like with everything, even like the people, like for the people in Hawaii and then the people in California, like everything's so different. And I think like filming this movie, because I have been like doing auditions for a few years, but I think like even like actors and actresses, they could like agree that like even though you may do like a lot of auditions, it does take like a little while before like you can actually get booked for something. So I think when I got this movie, like also it was, I really enjoyed it personally. Like one of the many reasons I did is because like I was born in Hawaii, but when we moved, like I didn't really forget, but I didn't like remember a lot about Hawaii because I was just so young. But I think being able to go back and then get like reminded of the culture, and I got to learn even more about it, it meant a lot to me. And then like when people watch this movie, I think they like can see the message, and then like you said, like how adventurous it is. But I mean, even like in reality, I feel like that's how we were, like we were actually connecting. And then like in the beginning, how we were saying like all of us like we're so close. I mean, we could literally like all of you guys that you're just like a text away from me. So I feel like with this movie I learned like more about who I was like as an actress, and then like it's helped me discover more about who I am as a person too. And I got to meet so much like new friends, and I got to meet like even the cast, like from the producers, like everyone, they're all like my ohana. And I'm so glad that this whole opportunity, especially like seeing everyone that we're inspiring. I mean, like as simple as posting like a TikTok, like all of my comments, they're saying like my mom is literally getting mad at me for how much times I'm playing Finding Ohana. And that's like crazy to me because like I remember like being younger, I would play things on repeat and my mom would be like, turn that off. But I mean, it's like it inspires me. I mean, people are saying like I'm inspiring them, but I feel like it's inspiring me, like seeing everybody like get inspired by us, if that makes sense.
It's awesome to hear that it was almost like you, like through your character, she was discovering Hawaii, and you were discovering Hawaii in a different way as well at the same time. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I know like I obviously like since I'm like born in Hawaii, like I know a little bit about it, but like even some words, like some of the Hawaiian language that like not even Pili, but like the other characters spoken, I got to learn more about. And I didn't even know like caves or kafu, like I didn't know that was actually a thing. So I feel like even though like Pili was learning things, like that was actually me learning things too, which was cool for me.
All right, I have a question for all the actors, and I'll tell you the question, and I'll throw it to somebody, and then you pass the question on to the next person, okay? But I'd love to know for each of you, what was your most difficult part of performing? Like, was there a particular moment where you're like, oh, this really tests me as an actor and as a person? And I'm going to pick Branscombe first.
Well, the most difficult part for me was, so Jude, I had 72 hours to get to you guys, right? Or was it 48? So 48 hours, 72 hours, I was jumping for joy. I'm on the soundstage at Warner Brothers doing voiceovers, and now I got to kind of come in and fit in, and I get to read the script again because I hadn't read that for quite a while, Jude. And the first scene was me in the tree. That was our first scene. And you start to think, who am I going to emulate? What am I going to play? So I said, I'm going to play my mother. And with my mom had a thing about challenging you right at the beginning and then showing you love. She would give you Jewish guilt. Do you know what I mean? So when I'm I'm on that ladder. I'm going, how am I going to play this thing? I'm still right to the very end, right from what I'm going to do. And I'm thinking to myself, I'll play Mama. Make a lot of kind noise, you get dirty licking. And then it became comfortable. So getting from Warner Brothers onto the plane to you guys, sitting in the makeup chair, putting all those, remember how white my hair was? They were putting all those things in there, Jude?
Yep.
All those stick-em things.
Yep.
So that was the toughest scene for me. People would say, maybe the crying scene was tough. I'm a crier. And if it means something special, that was a special scene for all of us and the kids. So what was your toughest scene, Kelly?
One of the challenges that I had in this is playing a mom, because I don't actually have children, and I have been, of course, now, you can see, I can give you some of my white hair, Branscombe. But even though I don't have children, these kids, were very, I felt like I wanted so much for this project to do well. And I wanted so much for these kids to be doing well, because it meant so much to all of us in the Hawaiian culture, right? In Hawaii, for the representation. I really wanted to do it right. I think the hardest scene, though, was the Ho'oponopono scene, only because of the Hawaiian language. And I wanted to make sure that I was accurate in the pronunciation, in the interpretation. Being part Hawaiian, I just did not want to make a single mistake in anything in that scene, because I just felt like this is Hawaii really being represented for the first time, right? Language wise and all of that. And I just wanted to be authentic. And being that I don't actually speak Hawaiian, I really had to rely a lot on a lot of the crew members who were actually Hawaiian speakers, right? Checking in with them, making sure that I was correct and doing justice and honor to the Hawaiian language. So that was the hardest part for me. Kea, what about you?
I think the hardest part for me was probably the part where I'm looking for E, my brother, because I feel like when things get hard, I think we all come to a decision on whether we're gonna give up or keep pushing through. And I think with that scene for me, I was it was really challenging, because with the weights in my fanny pack and having to constantly yell for my brother, it was definitely a challenge. But I mean, obviously I knew it was gonna be I wanted it to look good on camera, and I knew that it was gonna end up looking good. So I think I had to come to that decision, and I was okay, I'm just gonna push through. And I think, I mean, even though it was hard, I think that was probably the hardest part, because it was I even thought about when my dancing, when I dance and I start getting tired, I have to think about whether I'm going to just give up or if I'm just going to push through. So I think I really thought about myself. I pictured myself in any type of place where I have to make that decision. And I really decided to push through. So I think that was just my most challenging part. What about?
A little further clarification. So there were 2 locations where we filmed where Pili is looking for Ioane. They had just fallen from the cliffside on the banyan roots, and he falls deeper in the water and disappears under. And so we have some scenes there. That was a water tank in Bangkok. And then we went to a real waterfall so that we could do really, really wide scenes. And now you could see a true waterfall in the background. And there were little, what were called kissing fish that would eat the dead skin cells off of your body. So you actually had 2 locations where you had to look for Ioane and you were calling out for him. So I'm curious, were those 2 different locations from a performance standpoint, did they affect you? Was one scarier than the other? Did that affect your performance?
I think the one where the fishes weren't in, I think that one was more challenging on the side where I had to constantly scream for a little longer. So it was a little bit tiring, but obviously I knew that it was going to be good for the shot. So I tried to overcome it as best as I could. And then with the fishes one, okay, I don't know if everyone knows this, but I don't know why I am scared of fish. It's I I don't know why. I know they won't like hurt me, but I'm just scared of them. So I think like in the scene, it actually did affect my performance, not really in a bad way, but you know how I was kicking a lot, like how I was moving a lot? It's actually because I didn't want the fishes. I mean, I had to do it, but it was perfect because I didn't want the fishes to touch me. So while I was like in the water, when I was looking, every time they would call cut, I would just look around to make sure there are no fishes. And when I see fishes start coming closer to me, I'd keep on kicking. So when they said action, I would just kick even more. So I think it just, if anything, the fishes inspired me to kick even harder. What about you, Alex?
So Finding Ohana was my first like real big like acting experience, and so sorry, my hair is just not, it's just on its own world, but I come from, you know, I have a music background, and part of being a musician, and especially my favorite musicians are very authentic to who they are. It's very telling your own story, and so crossing over into acting, the best advice that I got from not even just my agent or my acting coach, but even from Kelly and Jude, I specifically remember asking both of them for advice on acting, was to relate the scenario that you're acting in with a scenario that you've actually gone through, which actually helped me for about 98% of the film, because most of the film, and Lindsay and Kea can speak to it for their characters as well, we were all very close to who we actually play in the movie. And so with pretty much every sequence, other than the action sequences, which were just fun to me, so I kind of lost myself in the moment of having fun with drowning and jumping off cliffs and all of that stuff, I had pretty much experienced all the emotions that I experienced in the movie, whether it be the scene that Kelly and I have in the car where I'm just angry and I feel like I'm acting as I'm an adult, but I'm getting treated like I'm a child. I felt that with my own parents in my real life, or, you know, having a crush on a girl or screaming at my little sister. Unfortunately, I've done that in my real life. And so the only scene that wasn't something I'd done in my real life was seeing my dead dad. So that was like, I don't know why I said it like that. It just felt like the right thing to say. So I saw my dead dad, and that was something. My dad is super alive. My real dad, he's super alive. And so we get to this scene, and they have like these little things, they're called like tear sticks, where they blow, basically they blow menthol into your eyes, just for anybody who doesn't know how this stuff happens if you can't cry on command like Kelly. By the way, Kelly is the goat of crying on command. Like, it's we would be doing, so this is my impression of Kelly. So she's like weeping, and they call cut, and she goes, all right, can somebody get me whatever, water or whatever it is. Kelly's like a goat. Me, not a goat. I'm but a small baby. And so that scene was really, really hard. Not even just for the crying, but you also have to kind of sell it. And so Jude actually, before we started filming that scene, sent us off. I kind of just tried to dig deep into, because it wasn't something that I've actually experienced, I had to dig deep into like, well, what would it be like if somebody I lost came back to me? And it was really kind of like an emotional challenge for sure. And I give all of the credit to not just Jude, who continued to push, and we did take after take until she felt like she got it right, but also credit to Kelly, who was there with me, Kea, who's there with me. Shout outs to Brad, who plays our father, who gave that real comforting, calm energy that helped play into it. Shout outs to Tear Sticks for giving me the tears, perfectly timed tears. I wish I could credit myself for that. I can't. But that scene was definitely a big challenge. And also, you know, like Kea said, in moments like that, as a person, you find out if you are fight or flight in those very moments. And acting is a very vulnerable thing. You're completely opening yourself up in front of a bunch of, with love and respect, strangers who are just going to freely judge you. And then it's going to go on the #1 streaming platform in the world where everybody else gets to judge you. And so it's a really vulnerable thing. And so I love the crew that we had. I love Jude consistently. For every time somebody credits me for doing something dope on camera, I give it all to Jude, because she promised me in the beginning of the movie, because I was always nervous about looking like and not a good actor, and she told me from the jump, she's like, I promise you we will not move on until it looks good. And so I think for all of these challenging moments that all of us actors went through, we can always rely that Jude didn't move on until she felt like she had it. And I think that that's a big reason why the movie did what it did. Sorry for the tangent. Lindsay, your turn.
Mine kind of goes in, I wanted to add off of Kelly's, because I feel like for me, the biggest challenge for sure throughout the whole process was this weight on my shoulder of making sure we did it correctly in the sense of the Hawaiian culture, the Hawaiian language. And from day one, that was the big thing for me. You know, if I was going to take on this role as this Hawaiian girl, and I think specifically for me as the character of Hana, because Hana, in my eyes, is the educator. You know, she's the one who wants to go and be the role model to teach everyone, educate them on the Hawaiian culture. And being me, Lindsay, I wanted to make sure that as I'm playing that role, I'm doing it correctly. You know, I knew, as Alex said, it's going to go on this #1 platform out there where millions of people, and not just millions, but Hawaii, you know, specifically is where I was worried about. We have a track record for, you know, being very picky on movies that, you know, focus on our culture, because honestly, most times they're not done correct, and they're not casted correctly, and they're not shot properly. So we often feel really disappointed by the end of the film that that's not who we are. That's not what we represent, you know? And so having this be the first movie that, I mean, from every step through this, I'm like, it's a script that I can tell was written from someone in Hawaii. They were looking for real Pacific Islanders, real Hawaiians, but you never see that for casting in LA. And, you know, as each step kept going on, I realized, I'm like, hey, they're serious about this story. So I wanted to be as serious as they were about this role. So going in every single day, I mean, I was going through the lines, I was combing through them. I mean, Jude knows, Mapu knows that we had a few moments that, you know, they did a great job to write this script, better than anyone could have ever done. But there were a few moments in the script I was like, you know, I feel like the wording's not exactly how we would do it in Hawaii, or, you know, if we tweak it a little, it would reach the audience better in Hawaii. And so we had moments where we sat and we talked and we went through that script word for word and made sure we broke it down to the point that, you know, me as an actor and them as a team, that we all could, you know, be happy at the end of the day, knowing that we're shooting this, and that when it goes out to the world, Hawaiians are going to be proud, Hawaiians are going to be happy. And that was the biggest weight on my shoulder. I mean, from the start all the way to the end. And that was the only thing that got me through this whole project, was having someone like Jude right by my side, that I could tell her heart was all pure when it came to telling our story as Hawaiians, as Pacific Islanders. And we did it. I mean, that was my thing. And I felt confident when we finished filming, and it was that next step of when the movie goes out to the world, how are they going to perceive it? And as we've been talking about, it's been insane. Hawaiians left and right have been just crying. I mean, people showing parts of themselves that they're like, I didn't even realize how much I didn't feel seen and, you know, represented in this world. And now seeing this movie, I mean, when I sat there and watched it with all my fellow Hawaiians, we would just be dying. I mean, we die and laugh because you never heard Pidgin. You never seen people like this on screen. It's not pretty and perfect. It's not hula skirts and, you know, the grass skirts and luau's. It's the real Hawaii that we all grew up in, that you know, it's tough, it's rough, it's not always pretty. People are like, you're from paradise. I go, yeah, expensive paradise, you know, it causes family problems, and we fight just like everyone else, and we have all these issues that the world has, but they think it's perfect. But we took this time to just go through this movie, and we made it real. And that was, for me, it was the challenge that ended up not being a challenge because we just nailed it. So that, for me, was the best and worst part of the movie for me through the process. Mapu, let's hear you.
So Mapu, definitely, I want you to answer that, but I want to add on an extra question for you, because you also work as a dialogue coach for everybody. So what was challenging for you as an actor, but also as a dialogue coach, like, because you were so emotionally close to all of the actors. So if you can answer both of those things.
So I was very, very fortunate that I got to play many hats. I got to be the dialogue coach. I got to sit next to Jude and witness everything that was happening. So the most challenging part for me was the day that I got to be an actor. I all of a sudden was like, oh, your scene is up. And I'm like, oh, yep, you're right. Okay. So I had to like take off all my gear, which consisted of like, I had this little fanny pack I wore every day with my scripts and my pens and my snacks. So I had to like take that off, rip my headphones off, like put makeup on. And then all of a sudden, boom, I'm in this juggernaut scene with Jonathan Kikwan, Kelly Hu, and Branscombe Richmond. So like, you know, I had to shift really quickly into that, have my dialogue. And, you know, I'm so grateful for my training for that. And it was good. And it turned out really great. But that was definitely like, I think I ran into that scene, right, Jude? Like, I think I literally had to run because I had just threw my scrubs on, threw my shoes on to do the scene. So that was from an actor's perspective, that was definitely really fun and a great challenge to switch hats that quickly. Dialogue coaching. Actually, Kea, for me, one of the things that was so funny is that you were supposed to be from New York, but I think your mom's influence on some of your words, like milk and gold, like certain words that you and I had to work on together because like, oh, you sound local right now. Like we gotta, yeah. But ultimately, because you have you have a local mom, so I feel like in the end that was very actually quite natural and really lovely in your work. Who else? I don't know. I feel like I've gotten to have really great individual moments with all of you. Mostly for me with you, Kelly, I just got to sort of finally get to witness, like, I don't know, like she's like legend for actors, for us. Sorry, I don't mean to embarrass you, but for a long time you, Amy Hill, were like our representatives of like, people. So for you, just getting to work with you was just lovely, just really lovely. Lindsay, you and I have had we had dialogue constantly about talking about, well, this is what I see, what do you see, and coming to middle grounds on it. And there were so many things that you saw as your character that like I didn't think of, and it was so lovely for you to use your education, being a Kamehameha graduate, use your skills. And then with Branscombe, how do you tame a wild horse like Branscombe? There's things you can say here and there, but that man is gonna do what he's gonna do, and I was so.
I'm gonna tell all of you guys a story about Branscombe. But something that happened while we were going to film the scene. It was the night before we were filming with Ki Kwan, and he was supposed to bring Pili to borrow the boat. And Branscombe calls me. It was already pretty late. He said, "Jude, for tomorrow's scene, when I go borrow the boat, Hawaiians, we don't show up empty-handed. If we borrow something, we would bring something to give to that person." And I said, "Oh, what a great idea." I said, "Let me call the prop master and have him take care of it." He's like, "Nope, I got it taken care of. Let me bring it." It's like, what? Okay, you want to bring a prop? Okay. So Branscombe shows up the next day, and he bought poke, and he bought poi, and he and like some dried fruits and some, just a lovely assortment of Hawaiian treats. And he brought that to the prop master, and the prop master found a basket and some tea leaves and put that all together. And so that's what you see Papa bringing when he and Pili are walking through the park to meet with Keoki. Well, that night, the prop master called me in tears, in gratitude, and he said, "Jude, I've been a prop master for 25 years. I've never had an actor bring their own prop because they felt like it was the right thing to do." And the spirit of aloha like permeates like every aspect of this film. And with people like Branscombe always had tea leaves. Branscombe would bring his own damn tea leaves, by the way. Branscombe was always walking on the tea leaf. Branscombe would say to me, "Hey, Jude, can I have the flag of Hawaii in this scene?" And I would say, hell yeah, absolutely. And these are these little rich details that actors, bring to the forefront and enriching their character. But Branscombe, you were next level, brah.
Hello there.
I just shared the story about you bringing your own props for that.
I heard you. I heard you, and I'm so wonderfully excited about that. And, things come to you in the middle of the night when you're sleeping in bed, and they go, "Hey, you should be doing this." And so you just make it up and you bring it. And that's kind of how that whole thing started. Because I'm not really that smart, but I'm kind of quick. You know what I mean? I'm not smart. I'm just quick. So that's how I came up with that whole thing. And it comes to you. Your ancestors bring it to you while you're at the Prince Hotel.
Anyway, it was just such a wonderful touch. It was such a personal touch. And yeah, Ellie and Simon, this happened throughout the movie. Like all the actors in their own way brought such personal touches. Like with Kelly, when we were preparing to shoot, I asked her in advance, how do you feel about hula dancing? And Kelly said, oh, I don't really hula dance, but I will do it. And I want to do it right. So Kelly on her own did research and reached out to local friends, and she practiced, and she wanted to just really do it justice. But like Kelly didn't have to do that. Kelly did her own homework because out of her love and respect for hula and wanting to represent it authentically. So hats off, Kelly. Seriously.
Thank you. No, I think all of us were very conscious of doing everything pono, like the right way for Hawaii. And especially you guys, Jude. I feel like you guys were so respectful. You and Ian especially were so respectful of the culture and the language, and just being so aware of how much it meant to us in the community to do it right, to give representation in the right way, not Hollywood Hawaii, but a true representation of Hawaii, and even down to the gifts that you guys chose to give the crews. It was like the trees that were planted, and the scholarship at Hawaii International Film Festival to help with more Hawaiian stories, help create more Hawaiian stories. I think that kind of care and that kind of attention to doing the right thing was passed down from the top. I think that you guys were really so careful to honor Hawaii that it made us feel like we were all in a project that was pono, that was right for us.
Thank you, Kelly. So, and Ellie and Simon, just to further illuminate on that, I really have to give credit to Ian Bryce too, because Ian Bryce, our producer, he's produced huge movies from Saving Private Ryan to all the Transformer movies and Speed. I mean, like all of these famous iconic movies, and with the biggest budgets. And I would tease him. I would say, "What are you doing producing this student film?" And he would say, "Don't say that about yourself." But he's somebody who should be Hollywood. He's the least Hollywood. He gets it done, but he does things with so much heart and so much like thought. And so as we were preparing to wrap up in Hawaii, he said to me, Jude, I know normally we would give crew gifts of like hats and t-shirts that say the film's name. He's like, but I feel like this group of people would much more appreciate if we took that money and did something meaningful with it. And so that's exactly, he started to do the research. He said, with your permission, I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? That's a great idea. So he started doing research, and we found that one of the best ways that we could use that money was really literally reinvesting in Hawaii and replacing our carbon footprint, because filmmaking does take up quite a bit of a carbon footprint. And so we planted a tree in the name of every single crew member with an organization that plants trees. And we did that. And yeah, the writer and the producer and I started a creative writing scholarship fund at the University of Hawaii.
Wow, that's incredible.
But I mean, that's it. It was pono. It was the right thing to do.
We've only been lucky enough to go to Hawaii once, but as you said, we really didn't know anything about the country before we actually arrived, because the only thing we'd seen was Lilo and Stitch and that kind of a movie. But when we arrived, I think we were shocked by the level of hospitality. I don't think we'd ever experienced hospitality like that anywhere in the world. We literally stayed with a local family on the Big Island who would bring us fruit and vegetables from their garden for breakfast every morning, and we would eat with them every meal. It was incredible. And but that spirit of aloha just permeated everything. And I think as much as we just wished we could have stayed there, we took a bit of that away with us when we left. And but that same spirit of aloha came through so loud and clear in the movie as well. I thought you did an incredible job of encapsulating that.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. thank you for hosting us, and thank you for your loving review of our film. It touches my heart so much, and that's why we make movies, right, guys? It's like that's the difference between art, right? Art, it makes you feel something. It's entertaining, sure, but it leaves you feeling an emotion. And so you guys spoke so lovingly of our film that it left me with an emotion. So I want to thank you for all of your support.
Oh, thank you. And thank you just for creating such a wonderful movie that is a blast to watch, but also sends a really, really important message as well. We loved it, and I'm so glad people around the world love it as well.
And I did say in our review, but I really meant it. It takes a lot for our teenagers to enjoy a movie. And I feel like it hit that note really good of kind of being challenging. Like, it was obviously family friendly and really enjoyable, but it was challenging enough that they really got into it. And that is almost impossible for teenagers. So I feel like takes incredible skill.
Oh, Papa, where are you?
There he is, perfect in time. With is that a Dixie plate with some rubber bands?
Branscombe, we're just going around and signing off. Do you want to say something? We're all getting ready to sign off.
Ohana.
When I was a little bitty baby, my mom used to rock me in the cradle. I love all you guys. I'm at Pukalani Longs. You guys want me to get you anything inside Pukalani Longs right here?
Crack seed.
Lindsay, I think I saw your Ohana up here.
I'm sure.
I love all you guys. Thank you for having us. I hope we can do another one.
Yes, sir.
I miss you guys.
Yeah, I miss you guys too.
Yes, too.
Miss you.
Are we going to see a Finding Ohana 2? Is that a possibility?
I hope so.
We do too.
Everybody, cross your
Jude.
We're all
Jude.
I hope
Putting
so.
it out there.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yes.
I hope so.
I have to say, if it wasn't for this pandemic, I think we would all be gathering and hanging out a lot more.
We would just make it anyways. We just make the sequel anyways.
yeah.
Come to Maui.
Let's
Everybody
on our
come to
own.
Maui.
Finding Ohana, spam style.
All right,
I've
y'all.
got lots of room. I can have all of you over my house. Come to Maui.
Oh, would love that.
Feel.
Thank you, Branscombe, and thank you guys all for taking time this afternoon to chat with us. Really, this has been awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
We really appreciate it. I'm glad we're able to give you an excuse to all get together and chat too. It sounds like that's what you do.
We always have that excuse.
Thank you. Aloha.
Thank you.
Aloha, everybody. Mahalos.
Shut up and sit down.